MSW Media.
So yeah, now it's clean up on aisle 45 time. And for a long while yet, it is going to be clean up on aisle 45.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 224 of Clean Up on Aisle 45. It's Wednesday, May the 7th, 2025. I'm Allison Gill.
Hey, AG. It's Harry Dunn here. Hey, we both got to talk to our friend Katie Fang yesterday. How cool was that?
We did. She came on the Beans she appeared on the Daily Beans on Tuesday, and I know you spoke to her, and I think we talked about the same thing, and we're going to talk about it later in the show.
Yeah. People are pissed about it, so I mean, I guess it's right we'll be talking about it, you know?
Yeah, for real. And we have a lot of stuff that we're going to cover this week, including an update on Signalgate. The leaks keep on coming, as you can imagine. And we have the new Trump U.S. attorney that has started reviewing Alexander Smirnov's conviction as a judge orders him to remain in prison. Remember, he was asking to get out of prison. So
Yeah. And plus, we have the lawyers for the FBI telling the courts that the Department of Justice can't be trusted. I'll read that one more time. We have the lawyers for the FBI telling the court that the DOJ can't be trusted over the January 6th list they're being compelled to create. And as Senate Democrats push back against returning insurrectionist restitution money, the DOJ has struck a deal with the estate of Ashli Babbit.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about that we spoke with Katie about on both occasions. And if that's not enough for you, we've got some news on the Pillow Man, Mike Lindell.
Pillow Man, there it is.
Every week for the D Block, I go searching for Rudy Giuliani and Mike Lindell news, and I found some.
Of course we did. Of course. They can't help themselves.
But before we get to any of that, we have some new patrons to thank. Thank you so much for being patrons and being sustaining members of this show. You make the show happen. We couldn't do it without you. So thank you to Stephen, Bree King, Julie Oberg, Jill Gernert, Baxter Simpson, and Rebecca Romans. You are awesome. We love you. Thank you for supporting us. If you want to become a patron and support independent media, support me and Harry, you can do that at patreon.com/aisle45pod. That's AISLE 45POD. All right, Harry, let's talk about our chats with Katie Fang, because you had a great conversation with her on Monday about the settlement that Trump's Department of Justice has reached with the family, the estate of Ashli Babbit. Katie wrote on her Substack, Law and Disorder, she said, I just posted my latest installment of what I'm calling the Fang Files, and I felt compelled to write down some more of my thoughts on this bullshit settlement. I love I
was just about to say, I love angry Katie Fang. It's great.
Again, we don't know the exact settlement terms yet, according to the lawyers on Friday in court. A deal may have been reached in principle, but an agreement has yet to be signed. But I suspect it's going to be a cash settlement for a lot of money. After all, the lawsuit demanded $30 million for what they claim was Babbitt's wrongful death due to a police officer's negligence. She goes on to say that she's particularly disturbed about this settlement because it's grossly evident that it is only happening now because it's the Trump Department of Justice. You put a convicted felon in the Oval Office, don't be surprised when bad things happen. The DOJ under the Biden administration appropriately defended against this absurd wrongful death lawsuit. In fact, under the Biden administration, the DOJ appropriately denied the allegations made by the plaintiffs in their lawsuit. 2 thorough investigations were conducted into the conduct of this Capitol Police lieutenant who was involved in the shooting, one by the Capitol Police and one by the DOJ. Both investigations exonerated the officer and cleared him of any wrongdoing. And in fact, one internal review report determined that this brave police officer potentially saved members and staff from serious injury and possible death from a large crowd of rioters who forced their way into the U.S. Capitol and to the House chamber, where members and staff were steps away. This law enforcement officer saved lives on January 6th. The Trump DOJ now spits on that truth by settling with the family of Ashli Babbit. Whatever happened to the party of law and order, the party of back the blue? I guess when it's a Trump supporter, then being cleared of any wrongdoing becomes irrelevant. So talk a little bit about what you chatted with Katie about.
Yeah, no, that's she's 100% right. And this just goes back to, like, I always am going to highlight this every time I'm talking about January 6th stuff, because it's not me. It's not the officers. It's not people who were pissed about it that day that keep bringing it up. we have to respond to bullshit, like Katie just said, like this. Ashli Babbitt's, they're making the news, and we have to respond to it because they're continuing to whitewash and downplay it. I talked to Mrs. Sicknick on Monday, and Mrs. Sicknick's she's Mrs. Sicknick, for those that may not recall her name, she's the mother of Officer Brian Sicknick, who died the day after January 6th. I was a police officer who defended the Capitol on January 6th. And, she just asked one question, and she said, with everything that's happening and Trump calling this a day of love, the criminals getting out of jail and pardoned and forgiven, Ashli Babbit been given money, then why is my son dead? Like, if nothing bad happened, according to them, then why is my son dead? And I mean, that just leaves a thought in your head that, like, wow. Listen, I'm not here to make any excuses for Ashli Babbit or anybody that had their lives changed, ended, altered that day, destroyed. I'm not defending any of that because they're all grown-ups who made decisions to do whatever they did. But there is one common denominator, and that's Donald Trump. Everybody whose life was affected that day, it's because of that man. This settlement, like I said, we don't know the terms of it, but they were seeking $30 million. That settlement needs to be paid by him, not the taxpayers' money. So, I mean, just think about whatever settlement she's going to get, or that state is going to get, it's going to come from taxpayers' money. And that's just an even bigger slap in the face.
Yeah, and that's the problem with having him in power, is that he now controls the levers of the Department of Justice and can make these, restitution settlement payments and things like that. Giving money back to the insurrectionists that they paid in restitution is another thing that they're doing. And I'm wondering, too, wasn't Brian Sicknick's death ruled in the line of duty, thus generating benefits for the Sicknick family? My concern is whether or not that designation is in trouble.
In jeopardy. That's a good question. Yeah, that's a very good question. I never thought about that until you brought it up now. Wow. Yeah, no, let's pray not.
Because I know a lot of veterans benefits are up in the air. A lot of Social Security is up in the air. A lot of things. Student debt went from waiting to have your student debt forgiven to now being in collections and having your wages garnished and having your tax refunds and government benefits apprehended by this administration. And seeing as they're so hell-bent on retribution and revenge.
That's all that this is retribution and revenge. I am glad to see that our chief, well, I say my former chief for the United States Capitol Police put out a statement. It's rather lengthy, but I'm just going to read out some things that stood out to me. And it's he titled it, "Disappointing Decision by the Department of Justice. I'm extremely disappointed and completely disagree with the Department of Justice's DOJ's decision to settle a lawsuit involving a woman who attacked the U.S. Capitol. The settlement was decided without the United States Capitol Police knowledge. In 2021, the DOJ said there was no evidence to show law enforcement broke the law. Yet now, the DOJ is agreeing to pay a settlement. Although the United States, not the USCP, was the defendant of a civil lawsuit, this sends a chilling message to law enforcement officers across the country, especially those who have protected missions like ours." And then he goes on to talk about, but this actually stands out to me. The U.S. Capitol was closed to the public on January 6th, but that did not stop that woman at the center of this lawsuit from breaking in with other rioters. She had to go through several barriers to enter the Capitol, including bike rack barriers and closed doors. And that's one of the points that I've always made. People were saying that, hey, they were just walking around. They were just, and listen, there were clips where make it seem like, hey, these guys were just walking around. But to get to that point, they had already breached 3, 4, 5 different layers of securities. And like I said, that would include bike racks, that would include officers, locked doors. So they had already breached multiple levels of security, layers of security. So for them to just say, hey, we were just walking around inside. Yeah, after you beat the crap out of people to get in the building.
Yeah, one of your female colleagues testified before the January 6th committee about being crushed by a bike rack when they breached one of the layers of protection that you're talking about.
Yeah, that was Carolyn Edwards who testified. She's an amazing officer. And yeah, but that's the thing. They breached multiple layers. It wasn't like when he said they were just let in, you beat the crap out of people to get in. And yeah, there may not been resistance at the door because you were trampling them to get in. So I'm glad that the chief made a statement about this, because I'm sure, like, listen, there could be a lot of Trump supporters out there, and I'm sure that I know for a fact there are within USCP, but I know there are a lot of officers who were there that day who are very, very angry and disappointed about this, especially when officers can't even get a damn plaque up to acknowledge their heroics from that day, let alone the $30 million settlement.
Right. I mean, exactly. And when we're talking about the former Capitol Police Chief, are we talking about Brian or Thomas Manger?
Yeah, no, this is the current, my former.
Oh,
he's still
gotcha.
the chief. Although he is set to resign,
right.
He retire within, I think, at the end of the month.
I'd retire too, man.
Or May. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. He came in after January 6th. He was like the chief on January 6th, Stephen's son. Was Nancy Pelosi asked for his resignation.
Yeah.
And he did. And then Chief Manger came in right in the aftermath in one of the darkest times. And I believe did a good job in leading the Capitol Police through this. So.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting test of the strength of previous DOJ decisions. I remember back when Joe Biden was elected and nobody brought the obstruction of justice charges from the Mueller investigation because the previous Attorney General, Bill Barr, had written a memo saying that obstruction of justice was improper and could not be brought. And had anybody tried to file those criminal charges, Trump would have shown him that piece of paper from Bill Barr saying, oh, nope, the previous DOJ said decline to prosecute.
Right.
And so everyone was like, all right, well, I guess we can't bring the obstruction of justice charges. Now, here we are in a different position where Biden's Department of Justice and Merrick Garland said, no, he's cleared of all wrongdoing, this officer who shot Ashli Babbit, and is not owed any, she is not owed any restitution. It'll be interesting to see if this can get approved by, I believe the settlement has to be approved by a judge, and to see how strong the previous DOJ's contention is versus the current DOJ, and if it works different in reverse. And then we might learn the lesson later, hey, you can overturn previous attorneys general, or maybe not. It'll be interesting to see. I'm pretty sure the judge has to bless this settlement. And
that's one of the things that I asked Katie. I mean, I asked her, I was like, this has to be approved by a judge, right? Do we know the judge that's overseeing it? It's a district court. I mean, in DC, it's going to be a DC judge, but do we know the judge overseeing it? And secondly, it's a civil suit. So do they really have that much leeway or, latitude to even decline it? And kind of like in New York with Judge Ho, like what can the judge really, the judge has to accept it, but what can the judge really do when it comes to this, Yeah,
and it might not be correct to compare like the Mueller obstruction charges with this because that's a criminal case. That would have been a criminal case. This is a civil case. There's different rules. But it'll be interesting to see what the judge does in this instance. And I don't know if we'll ever know what the amount of the settlement is, though I feel like this administration tends to brag about stuff it does.
I think people are going to find that out. Like, I don't think they can hold water, so.
They can't.
And also, I mean, you know what? I mean, can they, if it's taxpayer, like, couldn't that be subject to FOIA? Like, this is coming from the federal government. The government's paying this. You can't have undisclosed funds going to somebody. Like, how do we know that it's not $100 billion if it's undisclosed? I mean, couldn't this be subject to FOIA because it is the government settling, which the government is the people? So
or they might have to like we learned what Andrew McCabe's settlement was. We learned what Pete Strzok's settlement was. It might be a rule that when it's the government, when it's taxpayer dollars, you have to let people know. But we'll see, and we'll continue to report on it. All right, we're going to talk about how that amazing statement that you made that attorneys for the FBI don't trust the Department of Justice.
This is crazy.
We have to talk about that. But we will take a quick break right now and be back with it in a second. Stick around. We'll be right back.
All right, y'all, welcome back. We have another story from Huffington Post about January 6th. This one about the Trump administration compelling the FBI to provide list of agents who worked on the prosecutions of over 1,500 insurrectionists. They write, attorneys for FBI agents who investigated the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol told a federal judge on Wednesday that they cannot trust the Justice Department will not give their names to President Donald Trump purely so he can retaliate against them. That's just
Gosh,
scary.
Harry, do you think Donald Trump would put officers, law enforcement officers at risk?
He would never do a thing like that, right? As a civil lawsuit against the DOJ has gone through the court system, the government has been consistently vague about what it intends to do with the list of roughly 5,000 agents who investigated the 2021 attack on the Capitol. Attorney Margaret Donovan told U.S. District Judge Gia Cobb.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust it either. And neither did the FBI. You remember? The one guy who they called a saint, right? Driscoll.
Yeah.
The Driz, where he's like, I'm not giving you lists. Here's numbers. Here's a list of numbered like private identified employee numbers. I'm not giving you anybody's names. Nobody trusts this Department of Justice. Deputy Attorney General Emil Bovee, who was formerly Trump's personal lawyer, demanded the FBI turn over the names of the agents in February after Trump signed an executive order he said would end the weaponization of the federal government. In a memo to the Justice Department, Bovee echoed the president's unsubstantiated grievances with the Biden administration and its so-called, quote, unprecedented third world weaponization of prosecutorial power. The only way to resolve that, Bovee said, was to engage in a review of the Justice Department. And so when Driscoll first objected to handing over the names, right, Bovee was like, no, we're not going to print them out or anything. We're just looking into it. We're just doing an investigation. We're just reviewing it, which is just BS. Bovee said, quote, the department has already started this process, but much more work is required. No one who has acted with a righteous spirit and just intentions has any cause for concern about efforts to root out corruption and weaponization. Really?
Which is weird because I just testified last week with two former prosecutors from the DOJ who were removed from the department because of their work on January 6th. Yep. But instead of clearly investigating corruption or weaponization in thousands of January 6th cases and building outward from there, however, the Trump administration has started by forming a list of names of anyone who worked on January 6th cases. Trump has a pattern of pandering to the January 6th defendant turned pardon recipients, many of them who expressed a desire for retribution against law enforcement officers, Donovan wrote.
Yeah, a pattern of pandering to January 6th defendants.
And we're seeing it, just like the story we just talked about.
Pardon recipients. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe up to $30 million to Ashli Babbit. As we know, Trump has referred to the defendants as political prisoners and hostages. He's called for January 6th investigators and prosecutors to be imprisoned. Trump allies like Musk have not only downplayed the severity of what happened on January 6th, but they've shown little discretion when it comes to blasting out personal or sensitive identifying information about Trump's perceived enemies online. In November, Musk reposted a list of government employees on Twitter. That's his social media platform, prompting a deluge of harassment against them. So this is common. Jack Smith wrote about it ad nauseum in his two cases so that he could get protective orders over the discovery evidence in his cases that he brought against Trump for these particular reasons. And he outlined and had, multiple instances of harassment and doxing and multiple occasions of people being threatened, having death threats.
I mean, even Trump was doing it even as defendant. And, he was taking that picture of, what was the judge in New York when he had the picture of him standing behind him with a bat or something like that? Or
Juan Merchan,
Judge Merchan. So even the Judge Merchan had to take steps to protect his clerk and the courtroom staff. So they have a history of attacking people, even in the courts.
Those were the arguments for gag orders, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Precisely. This happens all the time with this administration.
Oh, and if the list of FBI agents is not destroyed or the judge does not order a preliminary injunction, which would bar the government from sharing it outside the DOJ, there's little hope that the agents won't find themselves being targeted for harassment, their lawyers argue. They say, if the Department of Justice wants to look at 3 years of January 6 prosecutions and look for weaponization, have at it, Donovan said. noting that the department should start by destroying the list of names to keep it from being publicly disseminated. But the DOJ doesn't seem to want to do that, she told Judge Cobb.
Right. Yeah, she said, we don't have a Justice Department that won't agree not to put the lives of 5,000 agents at risk. And Cobb asked for federal prosecutor Dimitar Georgiev-Remel whether the department would agree to destroy the list. The judge actually said that. Would you destroy the list? And he said no. He demurred when the judge asked him to describe the process the government was following for its weaponizations review. And he suggested the department was merely following Trump's executive order. We're just following orders, Your Honor. Now, Cobb, who has presided over numerous January 6 cases, appeared puzzled. The government had offered no proof that January 6 charges were fabricated or that there was a pattern of vindictive prosecution.
The judge said she couldn't just strike Trump's executive order, but the DOJ could at least clarify what went wrong with January 6 cases and why they needed to look for so-called weaponizations. That's actually a really good point. Okay, well, tell me what exactly went wrong. What are y'all looking for here? Mm-hmm. But that's what the internal review is supposed to uncover, Georgiev-Remel said. When Cobb pushed back and said there still must be a proper purpose, Georgiev-Remel circled back to the powers of the presidency. The powers of the president, that's always that's their go-to, and the executive order, and claimed there was nothing inappropriate being done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Georgiev-Remel told the judge there was nothing to worry about. You have nothing to worry about, even though you should always worry about this. Seemingly ignoring that the Trump administration has been found out of compliance with judges' orders in other court cases. Quote, the government will operate lawfully. There's no basis to believe anyone will act contrary to the law, he said. Oh, there's plenty of basis, sir. FBI agents on the list argue that having their names all in one place threatens their First Amendment rights. Being on the list, they said, equates to being under investigation, something they have to disclose when asked about taking on new assignments, for example. Lawyers for DOJ said the FBI agents are being probed for official conduct, which typically is not covered by the First Amendment. Now, Cobb appeared dubious of whether the government would be harmed if she ordered them not to publish the list. Like, tell me how you will be harmed if I tell you to destroy the list, especially if you could simply keep it private as discovery in the civil case unfolds. The matter is now under advisement, and Trump seems intent on attacking any law enforcement, like I said, that helped protect the Capitol on January 6th, whether it was there that day, like you, or those who investigated what happened in their jobs as law enforcement officers.
You know what I think, what I see, and I guess it just occurred to me, how will you be harmed if the list is destroyed, right? And thinking about the presidential, the executives, and what the judge said, well, what specifically are you looking for? You know what just occurred to me, and I think this is what it is, and I mean, maybe it shouldn't have come to such a surprise, but they know they did nothing wrong when it came to their job. I think what they want to do is make these lists publicly available so people can come forward with stories about how this person is a Democrat, or, hey, I know this judge, or I know this FBI guy. His wife had a Kamala Harris sign in her yard, or just anything that could say, hey, this guy's cousin's next door neighbor's brother, like stuff that it has nothing to do with anything. And I think that's what they want to uncover.
Right, this guy gave $5 to Act Blue in 1988.
In 1988, and that's the stuff that they would do, and that's how they would justify their retribution against them. That's exactly what they want to do.
Yeah, and just alert their wackadoo right-wing nutjob cultists as to who they are and where they live, so that they can go like DePape and attack Pelosi's husband with a hammer.
And exactly. And that's the thing. The people, these MAGA supporters are going to do it. That's why they don't want to make the list private, because internally they're not going to do it. They know that there's nothing, there's no there, as
That's why Ruby Freeman and Shamos had to move and go into hiding and won their case. Yeah.
Because they put that list out publicly and people started attacking them. Because it's not the department that's going to do it. Trump and the DOJ is going to depend on the MAGA supporters to be the attack dogs, so to speak, in this. And that's what the lawyers are upset about. The FBI lawyers are upset about. And they say the DOJ cannot be trusted.
Yeah. Agreed. And they certainly can't, because now apparently someone from the DOJ is reviewing the old Alexander Smirnov case, the guilty plea case, in, I guess, what we're calling a reprise of Mike Flynn, who pled guilty.
Yeah.
And then the DOJ under Bill Barr was like, well, maybe we should just let him withdraw his guilty plea. I smell a guilty plea withdrawal coming. With the Alexander Smirnov case, after they have a second look at what exactly he did wrong, even though they got a guilty plea out of him. But we're going to talk about that and some other stuff, but we have to take another quick break, so stick around. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's time to shout out our Hall of Fame sustaining members. These folks include Karen Sherman, Chris McCullough, A Dinosaur in Dental School, Steve Towell, Jens Elstrup Rasmussen, Je suis fatigue, Dr. David, We Will Survive, Ren Special K Kaidu, Maria Tovar, and Feral Therapist. I love
anything feral is kind of cool. I think feral is such a cool word.
I want that on a shirt. Feral Therapist. Thank you all so much. We couldn't do this without you, obviously. And it means a lot to us that you support us, and we'll be announcing probably here in the next week when we're going to have our May happy hour on Zoom with our patrons. So if you want to sign up again, patreon.com/aisle45pod. All right, Megan Cuniff has an update for us on Alexander Smirnov. So as you know, Alexander Smirnov is the quote-unquote FBI informant, Jim Jordan and Jim Comer's star witness that was going to blow the Biden-Burisma bribery scheme wide open until David Weiss, appointed by Donald Trump to investigate Hunter Biden, discovered that he completely fabricated his entire bribery story from whole cloth. That's Alexander Smirnov. He pled guilty and was sentenced to 6 years in prison, where he is now. And this is what Megan writes on Substack. She said, a federal judge in Los Angeles questioned why the Department of Justice is reviewing old cases when he rejected on Monday a request from prosecutors to release from prison the former FBI informant who pled guilty to lying about the Bidens. A prosecutor new to Alexander Smirnov's case said the Department of Justice leaders are reviewing the case to determine, quote, whether or not a different result might be the appropriate disposition of this case. Meaning, we looked at it again and it turns out there's just not enough evidence, that he committed any crimes. He said they're evaluating the fairness of the prosecution, basically to overturn
fairness of the guilty plea. I mean, the guilty plea.
Yeah, the guilty plea. Assistant U.S. Attorney Robert Keenan told U.S. District Judge Otis Wright II he doesn't believe Smirnov, who previous prosecutors said was influenced by Russian officials, ever wanted to flee. And, quote, it's the lowest incentive at this point because he now has a receptive ear in the office that put him in prison. Why would he flee? His pal Donald Trump is in the White House. That's his actual argument. Quote, it would be foolish and absurd for him to flee to the garden spot of Russia. That's what he said sarcastically. Maybe a, nice spot on the coast of Siberia. Hook.
It's truth in every joke, by the way. So some kind of truth. Judge Wright, however, rejected bail for Smirnov pending his appeal to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. He took issue with Keenan's passing reference to the fact that the government is reviewing its earlier decisions. Quote, and I want to know, what the hell does this mean? Asked Wright, a 2007. Let's go back to this. It sounds like he took real offense to this.
What the hell are you doing?
And I quote, this is quote, and I want to know, what the hell does this mean? Asked Wright, a 2007 George W. Bush appointee. Seriously, at this stage, the government is taking a look at this case anew. Am I reading that correctly? Yes, sir, Keenan answered. Oh. He sounds pissed.
Now, Keenan never mentioned Bill Asaley, the new Donald Trump-appointed interim U.S. attorney for the Central District of California, but he several times mentioned the former appointee under Biden, Martin Estrada, and said new leadership's case review continues a review process that Estrada implemented. That's not real. Keenan said the reviews are one government trying to do the right thing. This is one government trying to exonerate Smirnov, your lying sack of shit informant to the FBI. Quote, I want to make clear there's nothing new under the sun with the U.S. government, Keenan said. He said the same rules apply that have always in the last 24 years he's worked at the DOJ. We want to make sure we get this result right and that the end result is fair and just. That's what Keenan told Judge Wright.
The new DOJ's support for Smirnov comes after Judge Wright sentenced him to 6 years in prison on January 8th, after he pled guilty in December to one count of causing the creation of false and fictitious records in a federal investigation and 3 counts of tax evasion. Yeah, just that little small thing right there. Smirnov was prosecuted by now former special counsel David Weiss's office after Weiss was appointed to investigate criminal allegations against now former President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden.
But after the new guy, Ashli, took over the DOJ's Los Angeles office, David Friedman, an assistant U.S. attorney in L.A., who is chief of the appeals section, replaced senior assistant special counsels Leo Wise and Derek Hines, and then filed a joint stipulation with Smirnov's lawyers calling for Smirnov's release. Now, we knew about that, but now we're learning they're also reviewing the case, potentially to overturn it.
That sounds like the judge was upset about, The document cites Smirnov's chronic eye disease and the medical treatment that Wise and Hines repeatedly rejected as grounds for his release. U.S. Pretrial Services also supports Smirnov's release. Keenan on Monday cited conservative commentator Dennis Prager's book, Think a Second Time, and told Judge Wright there's no harm in looking at something anew and making sure we got it right.
Yeah, there's no harm in reversing what the Biden DOJ did correctly in the name of prosecutorial discretion. Smirnov, 45, was not in court Monday. He's currently at the Terminal Island prison near Long Beach, according to the Bureau of Prisons. He's currently scheduled to be released March 27th of 2029. Now, Smirnov's lawyer, David Chesnoff, that's the guy who tried to keep his case in Las Vegas against the wishes of the attorneys or the judge in California. David Chesnoff of Las Vegas spoke to Judge Wright first and said, he said the point of the appeal is to eventually get Smirnov's plea withdrawn. What did I say? He's going to withdraw his guilty plea.
Withdraw that guilty plea.
Keenan told Judge Wright he doesn't believe any promises or guarantees have been made to Smirnov, but he believes the appeal of his 6-year sentence has merit. If the Ninth Circuit vacates his sentence, prosecutors may support him withdrawing his guilty plea. Again, that just smacks of Mike Flynn.
Sounds just like it. Just replace the names. Keenan mentioned Smirnov's family and his ties to California and Nevada when arguing he's not a flight risk, as previous prosecutors said. He believes government cooperators such as Smirnov, who occasionally run afoul of a particular statute, that's insane, deserve to have their good deeds considered as well as their bad.
Yeah, bro, that's why he didn't get 20 years in prison.
Exactly, because that's what the statute called for, right? Unbelievable. That was the closest Keenan came to mentioning Smirnov's crimes, which included falsely telling the FBI in June 2020 that executives associated with the former Ukrainian energy company Burisma paid the Bidens $5 million each in 2015 or 16. The Burisma allegations helped fuel Republican impeachment efforts against Biden and were a frequent campaign talking point for Trump.
Yeah. According to prosecutors' January 1st sentencing memo, Smirnov also told the FBI contact that an executive claimed to have hired Hunter Biden to protect us through his dad from all kinds of problems, and that he had paid Biden $5 million so he, quote, would take care of all those issues through his dad. That was all made up. Smirnov repeated some of his lies in September 2023 in an interview, but also changed some of his story and promoted a new false narrative after meeting with Russian officials. And a day after this report, the Times says in Los Angeles on Wednesday, a U.S. District Court Judge Otis Wright rejected that request to let Smirnov out while his case is being reviewed. So we knew that he said, no, you can't get out, saying neither prosecutors nor Mr. Smirnov's lawyers had presented any evidence that Smirnov was any less of a flight risk than he was when he was arrested. The judge also pushed back on what he said were inaccurate claims by the lawyers about the precise terms of his plea deal. Like, you need to read it. The parties in the case, the judge wrote, quote, present no new facts in their papers that would alter the court's conclusion that Smirnov is a flight risk, let alone provide a clear and convincing evidence that he's not one. The fact remains that Smirnov has been convicted and sentenced to 72 months in prison, providing ample incentive to flee.
Plenty of incentive to absolutely. Unbelievable.
So I'm afraid that this will probably go down like Flynn went down, and this new review of his case will reveal that they shouldn't have brought the charges in the first place and that the Biden administration was wrong. Of course, this judge, who seems pretty pissed, also has to sign off on any kind of agreement, much like what we were talking about with the Ashli Babbit agreement.
Yeah.
And we'll see how this goes down. Although, like you said, as used the Eric Adams case as an example, the judges don't have a lot of discretion, but, here they might, and we'll keep an eye on it for you. All right. We got a couple of quick fire stories coming up after the break. Before we get to Pillow Man, we're going to update you on
Man.
Signalgate, Judge Hannah Dugan, and then we're going to talk about Mike Lindell. So stick around. We'll be right back.
All right, y'all, welcome back. We have an update on Signalgate.
Oh.
This is from the Wall Street Journal. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth used Signal more extensively for official Pentagon business than previously disclosed, engaging in at least a dozen separate chats, people familiar with his management practices said. That's always a funny. People familiar with his management practices said. In one case, he told aides on the encrypted app to inform foreign governments about an unfolding military operation. In one case, he told aides on the encrypted app to inform foreign governments about an unfolding military operation. He also used the non-governmental message service to discuss media appearances, foreign travel, his schedule, and other unclassified but sensitive information. The former Fox News host set up many of the chats himself, sending texts from an unsecured line in his Pentagon office and his personal phone.
Yeah. And by the way, that third-party app called Telemessage that Mike Waltz was seen using during a cabinet meeting when Reuters snapped a photo of it, Telemessage has been hacked.
Whoa, has it?
Yes, and the app has shut down pending an internal cybersecurity investigation. So super safe, using on a dirty line from the Pentagon to circumvent the classified, information stuff.
Wow.
Using his personal phone and possibly using Telemessage, which has been hacked. It's been hacked.
Of course it has.
And I mean, this stuff is just going to keep coming out. Right. Clearly, the guys who used to work with Hegseth at the Concerned Veterans of America, who were walked out of the Pentagon after being given polygraph tests for leaking to the press, friends of Hegseth, advisors of Hegseth, dudes that Hegseth brought into the Pentagon, are just drip, drip, drip leaking all of this stuff about Signalgate. And
they can't help
themselves.
themselves.
It's going to stop anytime soon. And man,
I mean, he can't help himself. He's not He's not a security official. I mean,
you can only carry a drunk Hegseth out of a conference so many times before you're done, and you're just going to spill all the tea. So, it's going to keep coming out. All right, next up, we have a brief update on Judge Hannah Dugan. She's the Wisconsin judge charged with helping a man in her court briefly evade immigration authorities. We're going to be covering that particular case here on Cleanup on Aisle 45. She's added prominent conservative lawyer and leading U.S. Supreme Court advocate Paul Clement to her defense team. The Wisconsin Supreme Court on Tuesday temporarily relieved Dugan of her duties while her case proceeds. Pretty normal. Clement, a U.S. Solicitor General during the Republican administration of G.W. Bush, who has argued more than 100 cases before the Supreme Court, has clashed with the Trump administration in other cases. First of all, he's representing Wilmer Hale in their lawsuit challenging an executive order Trump signed last month targeting the law firm's business with federal contractors and restricting its access to government officials and buildings. Harry, your lawyer, Mark Zaid, is suing Trump over having his security clearance.
That's the way. Shout out to Mark Zaid. Good. Let's go get him, Mark.
Now, Dugan is also represented by Stephen Biskupik, former U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Wisconsin. If that name sounds familiar, we've had his sister, Joan Biskupik, on the Daily Beans. She's the author of the book 9 Black Robes. And so to have Paul Clement on her team is pretty big because he's the guy who Judge Dale Ho in the Eric Adams case appointed as the amicus curiae.
Yeah, we talked about him a lot. Yeah, with the like you just said up in the New York case. So That was interesting. And but we got another one. We got another story. We got another story.
No Rudy news.
No Rudy, but Pillow Man, Our final story from the Guardian.
It sounds like a terrible buddy cop movie, Rudy and the Pillow Man.
Yeah. Rudy and the Pillow Man. That is great. Copyright that shit immediately, man. Rudy and the Pillow Man. Mike Lindell has launched Lindell TV. It's a network and daily content features hour-long shows from obscure right-wing podcasters, each lining up to tell viewers how great President Trump is. There is no information on how many people are actually watching Lindell TV, but they've been invited to the White House press room alongside folks like Steve Bannon and Tim Pool.
A segment on Thursday afternoon on Lindell TV, nominally on election integrity, featured Mike Lindell speaking into the camera for almost an hour, flanked by two women from Lindell TV, each holding a microphone in front of their boss and each looking very bored. Now,
of course they were.
Atypically for a broadcaster, Lindell was on a phone call while speaking to the camera and at one point put the caller on speaker so he could address the viewers. The sound was muffled and Lindell eventually hung up the phone. "I'll call you later," he said, before throwing it to a woman called Vanessa in the Lindell TV studio. Vanessa wasn't listening, and so he had to kind of wake her up. "Are you there, Vanessa? Are you there?" Now, Vanessa, with Lindell still on screen, asked her production team to play a clip of Trump speaking about Lindell at a rally. The viewers heard a panicked producer saying they don't have that footage, a message Vanessa relayed to viewers before Lindell took charge, imploring people to buy his pillows and his sheets. Now he's selling sheets. Quote, "They're $25 a set," Lindell said. "Any size, any color, while they last," he added. The network then showed the MyPillow website as Lindell told the production team to scroll down to the particular product he wanted people to buy. "Although we have over 250 products," Lindell told the viewers.
Oh, man. Earlier this week, above a chyron that read DEI judge is going after Mike, Lindell continued his 4-year crusade to, in his words, restore election integrity.
Does he think that 2024 was wrong?
Right? The United States has the worst everybody elections on the planet Earth. That's his quote. It makes no sense, right? That's his words. I didn't speak that wrong. That's him talking. "There's nobody worse than us. You can find communist countries. Nobody has worse elections than the United States," Lindell said. The channel then cut to an advertisement for MyPillow, of course, but also invited viewers to claim their $20,000 in silver from a website called MikeLindellGold.com. Get your silver from my gold website, When the Guardian tried to access the website, Google Chrome denied access, warning that it might be trying to steal your information. Like, you can't make this up, guys. Unbelievable.
Buy your silver today at MikeLindellGold.com. Buy your sheets at MyPillow.com.
Oh, man. Oh my gosh.
Was he selling sandals for a minute, too?
What? I wouldn't doubt it. My gosh, man.
You have to wear socks with them, though. You have to.
He's definitely a socks and sandals kind of guy.
Yeah, when he's on his plantation down there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He's a socks and sandals. The high socks, too. Not ankle socks, but the high socks. Like the over the calf socks.
Yeah, the old compression socceroos.
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. I could totally see with those sock garters that come down.
Yes. Everybody's picturing it right now, and I am seeing it. He's got those khaki shorts on too. Like, oh my gosh, what a terrible.
And hey, no shade to the sock garters, man. I used to wear those in the military, man. Right, like because in the military you attach them to your shirt, so they're called shirt stays, right?
Yeah,
so your shirt stays tucked in,
Class A uniforms.
and they go all the way down to the top of your socks, so your socks stay up. Brilliant invention.
Yeah, shirt stays. Yeah,
you're supposed to wear them with pants, not shorts.
Yeah, exactly. We wore them with our Class A uniforms with the Capitol Police. So yeah, definitely familiar with those.
Or you have those elastic bands that go up over your calf that hold your socks up.
What were those called? I've seen those before.
Sock garters. They're just like sock stays.
It's just a different type of them. Yeah. Sock stays or whatever.
But
they were great invention. Definitely keep your shirt tucked in,
Yeah, I loved a good shirt stay. Because if you were out of uniform, if you were
you're going to pay for it.
Or your gig line was off, yeah, you'd be face down,
Speaking
the
of
pavement.
Speaking of gig line, I couldn't stop giggling when I heard that for the first time, man. Like,
Gig
get
line?
your gig line straight. And I'm like, what the hell is gig? And me being a family guy, I would just quag my giggity. And I just could not stop laughing. In my head, I'm just saying giggity. And
okay, let's explain to the civilians. Gig line is your shirt line where your buttons are, has to line up with your belt buckle, has to line up with your zipper going all the way down.
Straight, 100%.
100% line up.
Straight
That's your
line.
gig line. And if it's off, if your belt's off by a half a centimeter or your shirt is tucked in a little bit to the left, you're dropping and giving somebody 20.
And so it was so funny, like I said, because I love Family Guy, and there's a character on there, Quagmire, and all he says is giggity. So he's like, get your gig line straight. I was like, giggity? Like, in my head, I just keep it cracking up. So,
well, my old ass was in the military before that show came out. So we didn't have any.
Oh man, but
any
God,
analog.
that was good times, man. Good times, man.
Well, Harry, somehow we managed to ended up laughing.
We did.
Instead of crying
I'll
at the end
take
of
it.
this
It's
episode.
a win.
But we're going to keep everybody posted on all of these cases that we're following. If you're really interested in the Alien Enemies Act and Abrego Garcia stuff and the men left in Seacoat, you can listen to the Unjustified podcast with me and Andy McCabe, former acting director of the FBI, former deputy director of the FBI.
Love Andy.
Yeah, he's fantastic and just has such brilliant insights.
His great hair too.
Yeah, he does, and his glasses, right? He looks like he's like a 50s yearbook photo.
A Vidal Sassoon model, male model.
Little Gloria Vanderbilt action going on. He's fantastic.
Yeah, he really is.
So for all of that, we're going to be following all that because a judge in the Southern District of New York, good old Judge Hellerstein, just turned a temporary restraining order into a preliminary injunction and declared the second judge now in the United States to declare Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act unlawful.
Yeah.
Because, there's just no way in hell that Tren de Aragua is an incursion into the United States at the direction of the Venezuelan Maduro regime. And so these cases are probably going to make one of them. So we're going to make their way up to the Supreme Court, and we'll see what this particular Supreme Court has to say. Because so far it's been injunctions to prevent people from leaving, to being unlawfully removed. But now we're actually having judges finding his use of Alien Enemies Act unlawful. And the Supreme Court will get to decide whether or not he gets to invoke the Alien Enemies Act in these circumstances.
Did he appeal to the Supreme Court already?
Not yet.
I mean, you know what's coming, but did he do it yet?
Not yet. There's a Southern District of Texas that's going to be appealed up to the Fifth Circuit. And then this Hellerstein decision is going to be appealed up to the First Circuit. I think New York's in the First Circuit Court of Appeals. And then I imagine it'll go up to the Supreme Court. And we'll be keeping an eye on it over on the Unjustified pod.
It's going to be a lot of books coming out. I'll probably say within about 10, 15 years from nothing but judges. And I really like all the shit that they're talking about and having to deal with now. Mm-hmm. Like, I would love if Tanya Chutkin wrote a book about like that. I can't wait to just hear what she has to say. Like, I mean, I know there are going to be a lot of good books coming out from some pretty
after they retire. Yeah,
after they retire, because this and even the Supreme Court justices. I mean, I would love to hear Sotomayor's like memoir or whatever. Mm-hmm. Just would not even like the beginning. Like this is the good part. Like I would fast forward get to the part like what's happening right now.
I wish we didn't have to go through what we're going through to get those great books.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, we're going to be back in your ears next week, unless you're a patron, and we'll be seeing you on the bonus episode this weekend. We appreciate you. And again, if you want to become a patron and get ad-free episodes, get the second bonus episode, get access to our monthly happy hour Zoom call extravaganzas, and any other like pre-sale tickets and invites to galas that we have and whatnot. You can do that at patreon.com/aisle45pod. Do you have any final thoughts before we get out of here for the week?
I got nothing really. I hope I don't have anything to do. I'm not traveling this week, which is great. I'll be out next week, but I'm around this week, and I am doing like little housework. I actually brought some beans. I love beans, lima beans, and I'm going to put them in my crock pot. I am excited to just make some beans this week.
Yeah. And listen to the Daily Beans podcast.
And listen to the Daily Beans while eating my beans and drinking coffee beans,
It's all about the leguminati.
That's it. Leguminati, baby.
All right, everybody. My final thought is I just want to give a shout out to anybody who's taking care of an aging parent or an aging relative, or a disabled relative or parent or a loved one. Anybody who's a caregiver. I see you, and I'm sending you love. It's a hard job, but it's also very fulfilling. So just wanted to let you know I see you and I support you. And we'll be back in your ears next week. Until then, I've been Allison Gill.
Harry Dunn. Thanks, y'all.
Cleanup on Aisle 45 is written, researched, and produced by Allison Gill, with editing by Molly Hockey. Our art and logo design are by Joelle Reeder and Moxie Design Studios, and our music is composed and performed by Adam Orr. Cleanup on Aisle 45 is a proud member of the MSW Media Network, a collection of creator-owned podcasts dedicated to news, politics, and justice. For more information, visit mswmedia.com. MSW Media.